Okay, so let's talk about what I've learned about process addiction. And oh my God, the camera. Okay. Um, yeah, so process addiction affects most people and stuff. I don't want to say all. That's making a big claim, but it definitely claims most and stuff. I've done I've done the random selections. I've done the group selections and stuff. Um, looked across place and time and stuff. This is in freaking inevitable. Okay, I caught myself almost cursing, and I'm proud of myself because I didn't need to curse. It wasn't necessary. So anyway, right. So your brain is an information transmitter, right? So the quality of the information and the transmission affect a lot about your behavior and stuff. Um, for purposes and stuff. Obviously, your your lower physiology has a reference on it, has an influence on this and stuff, and which we can talk about um, in a bit and stuff. Because yeah, so focusing on the process addiction aspect of it and stuff to make this like a short, simple, and sweet thing and stuff. Basically, how the process starts is you're given some dumb work. And for people who are very acquainted with video games but also don't like a lot of video games, you know exactly what I'm talking about and stuff. Um, that 30-second gameplay loop or whatever, everything you have to do to get to it and stuff. Um, Something that's kind of built into user experience design, you know, and so this typically involves naturally something forcing the issue and not thinking much. Except it's also very poor quality of exercise. You almost need to like hold your controller or be on your keyboard and mouse and stuff, or have your other peripheral stuff, and constantly move your body as you play, like and stand up and stuff to get some sort of semblance of exercise. And then we go for the tricks of process addiction, which I talked about in the other video that's on process addiction and stuff. And then amidst these tricks, you basically forget and stuff. Like your sensory memory, short-term memory and stuff get full and stuff, and it replaces a lot of things as you go, and you're also going through the focusing process and stuff, because the focusing process is a reward-driven process. You have like the D1 through D5 dopamine receptors in the brain, and the other dopamine receptors that just flood you with this feeling of numb bliss and stuff, physically numb bliss, and this level of interest and curiosity and reward and stuff. You're getting serotonin and stuff uh, as well too. It's a nice it's basically like a drug trained behavior and stuff. And then have a selectively rationed semblance of compensation or experience and stuff. These process addictions, they're giving you some semblance of something you want to feel on the inside, something you badly wish you could just go into your mind and experience as in the most lively way possible, which by the way is a very, very healthy way to spend your time. Having like an internalized imagination of like, some island you want to visit and stuff with like I don't know, um a I mean, oh, like that island in there's there's a book, The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. The island that shows up at the end with the giant crabs and everything. I mean, that's an example of a type of place that a lot of people would want to visit and stuff. Or maybe you wish you were at Disneyland and stuff, but it um you haven't made the time and stuff to really give it a thought about what it's like to be there and stuff, and you're just kind of like walking there and stuff, or Universal Studios or wherever, like, or maybe you want to go to the Grand Canyon or visit a volcano or something. You just kind of like you put your mind there and stuff, and that's basically what this process addiction is keeping you from. It's keeping you from that experience and stuff, from smelling the smells and doing the activities and doing the things and stuff. Um, and for that reason and stuff, your your mind is conditioned to be underactive and lazy and stuff. Um, that it deliberately works at all, and and kind of your mind sweats is what gives you increased mental strength as mental health. So it's going to give you mental health and stuff. So, and this is, basically a process and stuff. But this dumb work should be a red box. This is not good. Now, as for the selectively ration semblance right here, it can be good or bad and stuff. Like for example, when it comes to violent video games and stuff, video games with just like crazy unreasonable levels of violence and stuff, it has been demonstrated with a palpable amount of consistency that these games make people, give people like adrenal dysregulation and make people like kind of focus and obsess over violence and stuff like that. It's not good. It creates a very twisted, unhealthy personality and stuff. And so that's one example of this semblance going in a bad direction and stuff. But it could also mean this. So, we could also kind of like do this and stuff because we're kind of, you don't want to reinforce the brain tracts for this type of behavior and stuff because this type of behavior is what gets people in trouble, gets them incarcerated and stuff like that. And certain process addictions have led to suicide and stuff. Like I remember in the 90s or early 2000s, there was a guy who had actually committed suicide because his favorite World of Warcraft character had died. And, if I remember the account correctly, he took a gun and, blew out his head. Like just, and, that's one example of it and stuff. And part of that can be chalked up to what's called the accumulation of brain porridge and stuff. That accumulation of waste buildup in the brain that occurs when you don't rest and eat after doing this green blip right here, the hard mental work and stuff. So, but however, when you have the right conception of things and stuff, it adjusts your beliefs and your perceptions. So you get accurate, complete information execution plan. You're covering the surface of the things you're trying to talk about, the internals and everything, or the surface of the things you're trying to interact with and stuff. And then you get, you're struggling, you're working, you're just busting your ass and stuff. You're doing the hard mental work or hard physical work and stuff. Hard physical work is also good for your psychological health and stuff. One of the secrets of this kind of hard work and stuff, and and not just sweating it out and stuff, but trying the complicated things and answering it, deconstructing and solving complications as you go, solving problems, managing conflicts and stuff, is that you mature very like it's very good for the maturity and stuff. So nobody should be quitting something just because it's hard and stuff. In fact, they should even try something that's even harder to make that thing they're trying to do easier. So you do just hard work, you get rest and recuperation and stuff, which can go in two ways. It can give you sick rest and stuff, which is, I'm not sure what that leads to and stuff, but it's not good. Or the rest and recuperation can be a reward and stuff. You're attempting life with topped off batteries and everything and stuff, and now things are better, so that's a reward. And then you're living as a human being ought to and stuff. You're doing what you actually ought to be doing and stuff, as also a result of success or growth, which comes from the hard mental work and stuff. And that you choose to do both and stuff, you can so there you go. We can amend this to that and stuff. But in this world and stuff, it has more to do with the mental work that you do, your stuff, your schooling, your training and stuff, how you answer and address conflict and stuff like that. We don't live in Neolithic times where you have to get up and stuff and see if a bear urinated nearby and stuff, and then see if the bear is nearby, and get a bunch of people together and spear him to death or whatever, and then maybe you cut up your leg really bad, and now you have to fight off a fever for 3 days or whatever. Like this is not the way the world is now, and has not been for a very long time and stuff. Because remember, my courses cover the United States. We're not talking about Neolithic, like areas of the world that still follow Neolithic cultures, um, for reasons of just being left behind, or not considering the new ideas, whatever, you know. Um, or and there's also the colonialism and stuff, and conquest and yada yada and stuff. So yeah, I mean that about covers it and stuff. We could don't need to say much more for that. But yeah, so as for the personal defect aspect and stuff, you know, personal defects lead to failing and stuff. Notice how I said it leads to failing, not to. It doesn't mean it leads to you being inferior and stuff. That has nothing to do with that and stuff. Because it's just not constructive. It's really not constructive. So this is the point where we have to balance being constructive with, uh, just being accurate, or having a correct line of reasoning. Um, but yeah, uh, yeah, this is pretty much putting process addiction in context and stuff. You have options and stuff. You have options, and you get out of this cycle right here by becoming aware, discovering, experimenting, trying to learn better. That type of thing. But this life only gives itself to the people who learn things really well. Stuff. So it doesn't matter how much effort you need to put in. You should, regardless of what just happened. You should try.